Well, good afternoon, or perhaps it's good morning where you are, or good evening, and a very happy new year to you as we all return to our workstations for a packed year. Now, 2022 ended on a real high note in the obesity community. We were all quite excited about next year, what was coming. And now that we're in that year, let's have a look and see what is going to come up in 2023 and what's coming up on the show today. Now, I'm excited. I can bring interviews from some tremendous guests, and we have Constantine and Becky sharing their thoughts on Action Teams and the Voices of Youth podcast, which launched last year and will continue throughout this year, and we'll get more empowered and more active. We also had a wonderful interview with Paddy Neese and Ian Patton over in Canada and the US on the latest movie coming out from Brendan Fraser, starring Brendan Fraser, The Whale. Now, it sounds like it's an awful title, but I can tell you now their interview is fantastic, and as advocates, they had a lot to share about that. We will delve into World Obesity Day Europe 2023, which gets me super excited when our community is so active. And we'll have Tim and Mario, our leads there in that area, joining us live to tell us what's going to take place. We do, of course, have Professor Jason Halford, as always, and our chair, Ken Clare, who's going to join us and tell us about the Congress in 2023, which takes place in Dublin in May this year in Ireland. So who else will be joining us? We have our esteemed panel. We have Frederico from Spain. We have our president, Solveig, up there in very cold -15 degrees in Iceland. And we have Susie Burney from Ireland joining us, our secretary. So what can you do to get in touch? Can you get involved? Can you get engaged? You can indeed. You can hashtag us on ECPO Patient Lounge. Just use that on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, where our comms team will pick it up and they will make sure that your questions come directly to us and we can actually answer them. As well as that, we will record this. So the session is recorded. It will be on our website in a few days, thanks to our tremendous team, Productions Bureau. And we would like to thank all of our sponsors: Pfizer, Medtronic, Novo Nordisk, Boehringer Ingelheim, Lilly, and the one and only EASO for their support in making this lounge and all of these activities happen. So let's get to it. I had the opportunity to have a wonderful conversation with Constantine and Becky earlier this morning. Now, we talked about the voices of youth. We talked about advocating. We talked about how it feels to be a young advocate. Let's hear what they had to share with us. Good morning, Becky and Constantine. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Patient Lounge. I'm really excited, and Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's exciting times as we come into 2023. I think, Becky, I'm going to come to you first. And last year in 2022, we had Action Teams, the global survey, and you were heavily involved in giving your perspective as a young person who lives in the UK. Now, we have a ton of data still to delve into. Do you think it's important still that we continue working on that? And if so, why?
100%. In my opinion, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. All the findings that have come out from the action teams, it just opens your eyes a little bit more as to what actually needs to be done. So like a lot of teenagers feel quite alone and, feel that it's their fault, and it's not. And there's a lot of, looking back now, if I was to have had the support back then, I don't think I would have had so many mental health issues as I do today, and different issues with myself and blame. So I do think if we worked a lot more on, the adolescents, it would help in later years.
Yeah. Do you think young people are actually listening when we talk about this? Because you mentioned there the self-blame and the mental health challenges that come with that. And we're seeing a huge amount of that, especially with the pressure of social media. But yes, do you think young people will actually listen to what we're doing and saying?
100%. So I remember being a child, I was heavily involved with our local council, who would do like little weight loss, like cooking meals and, getting a little personal trainer. And I would listen to everything they had to say. But I just struggled a lot with what they was asking. And in their eyes, it was, I couldn't be bothered. When in actual fact, I can be bothered. I do want to do it. it's just not working for me. Is there any alternative ways? So I do think children do listen. It just might look like they're not listening as much as people want them to. But from experience and looking back, it probably did look like I wasn't listening. But deep down, I can remember wanting to lose weight and wanting help in all sorts of areas with weight from a very young age.
Yeah. You know what you said there is one thing that I took from the Action Teens that I absolutely felt amazing about was that there is a misunderstanding, a misalignment between what healthcare professionals, caregivers, parents, guardians think and what the young people actually think. They do want to lose weight, they do listen, but they're also self-blaming. And actually, I'm going to come to you now, Constantine. Thank you so much for that, Becky. Constantine, you have been leading the charge with our young people across Europe. We launched our podcast. You're our moderator, sat over there in Bulgaria. And for me, it's been eye-opening. And even listening to Becky, just once again, it just blows my mind, the confidence and how empowered they are. What has your experience been like with this podcast?
One word, mind blowing. Like, honestly, Vicky, I couldn't be more thankful for this opportunity because, like, I've actually had the chance to relive my own experiences through these kids, through my guests. Like, every single one of them is amazing, so well spoken, and every single one of them has a knowledge of their problem so big we would never imagine it without talking to them. Like,
Yeah.
they're so well spoken and so aware of their issues and so aware of the issues that are preventing them to better themselves. It's like, it's literally eye opening. Like, you would never imagine it. And I'm extremely excited to get every single one of them separately to be able to discuss what they think, what their plans are. But like, literally every single one of them has some new thing to say that you have never thought about, that you would never see that way. It's just an amazing perspective to have.
Yeah, it for me it captures voices that we haven't captured before, and like as Becky said there, you know, if those things that she knew back then, if people perhaps listened, but also what I was listening to with Becky was that these people that are trying to help our young people are also role models. And I actually see you in that kind of role, Constantine, where you're leading the charge now and you're helping them to advocate for themselves. What are your hopes for the podcast and for young people in 2023 when it comes to obesity?
So my hopes are obviously very high because I think that we are going the right way, and I think the podcast that we're currently doing is giving an opportunity to those young ones out there that has never been given to them. Like, we have never given them the opportunity to be heard, to say what they want to be improved, what they want changed. And literally my hopes are, in every single episode, I'm asking them, what do you want to see changed? What do you believe is a step in the right direction? I want to get their ideas out there. Like, even if we get one listener of the podcast who has some sort of influence in this field, and he hears those young adults, because they are adults with everything, with the way they speak, and he hears their ideas and their needs, I believe that we're striving for change, and I believe that change can be made.
Yeah.
So literally my hopes are just to get every single episode out there, to get those people heard, and
get their voices out there and start breaking down that
Absolutely.
stigma that Becky mentioned. You know, the probably the belief that, well, they're not doing enough, they're not motivated enough, you know, and that's not good enough anymore. That's, you know, that's lame in my terms. That's lame now at this stage. I think for me, I'm excited that we're going to be bringing some healthcare professionals onto your podcast as well, Constantine.
Oh, yeah.
And I think just looking at the two of you on screen now, I'm like, I think we'll bring Becky into the loop as well, because I think you guys could have a fantastic conversation this year also. So perhaps, we will arrange that together and pull you into the loop of our young, empowered, incredible people that we have brought on board. I know you both have to get back to work, and I am super grateful for your time. And I'm going to love you and leave you and go back to our panel to hear what they have to say, because I know they're all excited that your next podcast actually is coming out now. So you had a chat with Reese, and it is going to be live, Constantine,
Amazing.
and it's
A bit of
exciting
promo, but
times.
amazing episode.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you both for joining us on the lounge, and I will head back to our panel now. Thank you.
Thank you for having
having
me.
us.
Bye, guys. Well, all I can say is they are amazing themselves. Hearing how articulate Becky and Constantine are, and actually Constantine's latest podcast will be live today. So watch our social media so you can listen to the conversation he had with Reese. Now, before I go any further, I want to bring our panel in, because what would it be without different, diverse, unique voices from different countries? And first off, we have the wonderful Susie Burney from Ireland, who is not only secretary for ECPO, my wing woman, right hand, and she is also executive director for ICPO and does a tremendous job over there. Thank you for joining us, Susie. We also have Mario Silva, who is coming in from Portugal. Mario leads the charge with APCOI over there. With childhood obesity. And if you could just see the work, guys, get onto the website. It's mind blowing. And last but not least, we have the wonderful Federico. Now, I won't ever pronounce your name correctly, Federico. Fede is joining us from Spain, and he has opened the latest patient organization there in Spain in the last, a year and a half or thereabouts. So, Fede, thank you for joining us. Now, Susie, I want to come to you first, if that's okay. You've been heavily involved with the podcast. You've been involved with the whole creation of the campaign on teens. What has your experience been?
Because we've heard from
I think we have
Constantine.
you on mute. There we go. Oh, got you. I got you.
It's been fantastic. I think just listening to Constantine, anybody can just hear the powerful voice that himself and Becky have. There's an old saying, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. We don't need to. Look at how articulate they are. We don't even need to say that phrase for them, because they have it, and we just need to give them that platform, and that's what we're doing. It really is fantastic to see that they're inspired. And I think in our support groups, the average age that people join them seems to be kind of almost 40, 45 years old. And to see now that this discussion is happening in this younger bracket is just phenomenal, because none of us had that courage to speak about it back then, because we all blamed ourselves. And that's changing now for everybody.
I have a question for you, Susie. Do you think, looking at the ages of these young people, they're from 13, 14 years up to, Constantine's, 26. Do you think you would have had that confidence at that age? You had a sports injury, and you said that, some of the weight started to change then. Do you think you would have had that confidence? I certainly wouldn't.
Not looking back, no. I mean, not about my weight, certainly. I had a different confidence with different things. I started teaching swimming at a young age, and I was able to stand and talk in front of a gang of children, no problem. I had confidence, but not that confidence to talk about such personal issues,
Talk about
which
weight.
I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Yeah.
I think it shows that there's been a shift. There has definitely been a shift, and that's what we needed to see. And I think with the work that you and ICPO were doing in Ireland with the patient community there, they're leading the charge really at the moment across Europe. It's just tremendous. So thank you so much for that, and thank you to you and your team, your tremendous team, who I noticed are all over Twitter actually at the moment. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to just jump across now to the wonderful Mario and Fede. Our duo. Now, Fede will actually be speaking in Spanish, so therefore Mario will translate for him. So, Mario, I'll come to you first, and then you can translate for Fede. You have actually engaged one of the young people that you know in the podcast in Portugal, and I know that makes you incredibly proud. What has your experience been with this, and what do you hope to see it do in 2023?
Well, first, I think it will be a great year for ECPO and for our community. And that is related also with these youth that are getting courage to speak up and to at an early age make a huge difference, and getting more respect from
Yes.
all the society, from the decision makers, from the healthcare professionals for this disease. So for me, it is a proud to watch this young girl that is one of the voices, the youth voices of Europe right now, that I watch her growing up, and I was not aware of all the challenges that she was having in their mind.
Yes.
So, and now that she's speaking, we all can understand better the whole big picture of this disease, because it's not only what you see.
Exactly, it isn't. And thank you so much for that, Mario. And thank you for being a powerhouse over there in Portugal with young people. But I want to come to Fede. And Mario, are you happy to translate
Of
for
course.
Fede? Fede, go ahead.
Pues es muy importante y es necesario que los jóvenes que viven con obesidad en Europa y en España se empiecen a empoderar, porque lo necesario es que den testimonio en primera persona, puesto que será la única manera de que se den cuenta de que lo que sufren las personas que viven con obesidad y dejen de culpabilizarles y se quite la estigmatización hacia estas personas y hasta estos jóvenes, que al final son jóvenes y son más sensibles.
Okay,
Gracias,
so
Fede.
I'm trying to translate. So in resume, Fadi is saying that it's necessary that young people living with obesity empower themselves to speak about their own personal experience with stigma, and that so many times they feel that is they're guilty or blame, and they suffer a lot from this stigma. It's what we were
Yeah,
saying also
it,
in
it's
another language.
exactly. And to see that happening in Spain as well, to see how consistent that stigma is and how we have to break it down is so important. So thank you to you all for being a part of the panel. I do have to quickly move on because we've got a packed show. We've got so much going on. So we're going to actually move on to a very interesting conversation that I had with Patty Neese from OAC in the US of A and Ian Patton, who is over there in Obesity Canada, on the latest movie from director Darren Aronofsky. I hope I pronounced that correctly as well. And starring Brendan Fraser, The Whale, which launches on the 3rd of February in Europe. So let's have a listen to what Patty and Ian had to share with me and when I spoke with them earlier. Hello, Patty Neese from OAC over in the US of A and Ian Patton from Obesity Canada. Thank you so much for joining us on the Patient Lounge. We're so excited to have you here, but most importantly, Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year to you.
And you as well.
No problem at all. I think this year is going to be a particularly important year when it comes to obesity. It's ramping up in recent years, but this year, I think for all of us, whether it's North America, Europe, or the rest of the world, it's quite an exciting time. And talking about exciting times, you guys have had the release of the movie The Whale, starring Brendan Fraser over in the States, and it's going to hit Europe in a few weeks' time. And I don't know whether to be nervous or anxious, but I'm relieved, I would say, that you guys have actually engaged with the team, the production team, with the producer, with Brendan Fraser himself. And Patty, I want to come to you first. What was that experience like, and how do you think that probably shaped some of the movie?
Thanks, Vicki. I'm so excited to be here. I love the idea that Patient Lounge, just getting together to chat. I think it's wonderful. It's been an experience working with the Whale team. They first approached us when a psychologist who was working with them, who specializes in treating patients with obesity, Dr. Rachel Goldman, suggested that they reach out to the Obesity Action Coalition and to find out more about what it's really like to live with obesity. So, they approached us, and with a title like The Whale, you're a little skeptical to start. But the title is actually, if you talk to the author, Sam Hunter, is meant to be controversial, and it has several meanings within the context of the story. So no spoilers. We don't want to spoil anything for you, but it has multiple meanings. So something for you to look forward to if you decide to go to see the movie. But working with the production company and the cast and crew, it's really been interesting in seeing their evolution about their knowledge about obesity. They really wanted to know and learn. We actually did, for the production company that markets the film and does all the promotional stuff, we actually did weight bias training for them and explained to them what weight bias is. That's the sort of depth they got into. It's the first time we've had that experience with any part of the media wanting to go so deeply into it. And watching, for instance, Brendan Fraser do interviews over the course of time, he's become an advocate for things like obesity treatment. It's really been good to see and very interesting. So, but Ian actually had a little more personal experience too, that with the stars. So I will let him talk about that.
Thank you so much, Patty. Ian, can I just say, I read your blog on the movie and I'd watched a number of the interviews with obviously the production team, with Brendan Fraser himself. But when I read your blog, I was emotionally moved. There was words that you articulated in that touched me as somebody who has been on that journey of obesity, reaching almost 200 kilos down to 90 kilos, back up to 140 kilos. And as I was reading it, I was like, wow, it seems like they really got it. What did you think?
Yeah, I think, like Patty mentioned, the team that was involved in it, they really put the effort in to get it right, or they were trying to get it right. And I think this is a different portrayal of a larger body character on screen than I've ever seen. And I think that's something that a lot of people have talked about. And I think that's something that a lot of people were really worried about when this came out. You got an actor that's getting put into a fat suit, and, you're worried about it being kind of a joke or something that's stigmatizing. And it's not a happy movie. It's not something that's, it's very dramatic and it's, but it's a real story. Like, it's Brendan Fraser and Charlie, the character. You connect with him on a human level, which I don't think I recall having that kind of connection with a character on screen before. And there's lots of elements within that character that I related to, that I, touched me and went, oh, I know what he's going through there, or I feel that, or I've heard that from my peers in the work that we do. So I was very, very impressed with that. And on top of that, the movie itself, like I said, it's very dramatic. It's a heart-wrenching film, and I think they did a really good job with it.
Can I ask you a question? Do you believe in that Brendan Fraser really and truly gets it? Patty has said there, and I've seen the interviews as well, where he's almost becoming an advocate for people who have obesity. Do you really think he gets it, or do you think he's taking that as a job, as I got to make sure these guys are convinced?
I would say, Brendan Fraser's got this huge online support network of fans that are super pumped about his resurgence these days, and everything good you hear about him is what I've experienced with him. I think he does absolutely get it. When we interacted with him, we had it was like a 2-hour Zoom call where we shared our experiences, and he listened and he asked questions, and he was very, very genuine in his interest in understanding what it's like living with obesity. He really did want to make it a respectful and true kind of portrayal of that character. And he put the work in, and I think he really does believe these things that you hear him talking about. And like Patty said, he's kind of become an advocate, and he is a very kind, genuine human being that I'm very, very happy I got the chance to speak with him.
Yeah, I've been a fan of his comeback. My kids are fans of his movies, George of the Jungle, and that, that's what they grew up with. And to see what he has been through and see his comeback, I'm excited to see him advocating for something that is so personal to all of us. But one thing I am curious to know, because I haven't seen it yet, but you guys have had that experience. Patty, do you think it's going to be educational for people who watch it? Do you think they're going to get just how hard it is, how challenging obesity is?
For people who have obesity, like Ian, so I think there will be parts of the movie that just speak directly to you. I've never seen some of the things that Brendan portrays in the media before. I imagine the This Is Us. I don't know if that aired in the UK or not, but the This Is Us series, the Chrissy Metz character came as close as anything to it. But so there are parts that resonate with you, and you feel like it's not just you. So that's, always good. I do think I have gotten some feedback from people who don't have obesity and aren't obesity advocates. And the feedback has been pretty wide ranging, but I think at the bottom line is I think it is developing some compassion for people with obesity and a little more understanding. And if we can just push that needle a little bit with this film, I think that would be good. I mean, there are things in the film that are not exactly how I would have portrayed them. But it, in many ways, and many of his things, like he has some self-deprecating humor. Who among us hasn't resorted to that? Among us with excess weight or whatnot, we do that to ourselves. He feels like he is unworthy, because of his weight. All these things are important to acknowledge that they're out there. And I hope it serves as an education for some people.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I took away from it, I was at the premiere in Toronto, and I think I wrote in my blog that he made a room full of perpetually thin people, fall in love with a character on the screen, and a character living with obesity, and that's not something I've ever seen. There's this huge standing ovation. You got all these people who, are looking at this character with empathy and support and stuff like that. And I walked out of that theater and I was walking down the street, and it's not a movie about obesity. It's not something that I think is intended to be an educational experience, but I was walking away from that theater thinking, people are going to leave that theater and they're going to walk down the street. And if they happen to see someone who looks like me or looks like the people that, we work with, and someone living with obesity, they might view that individual a little, they might view him as a human, right? They might have a little bit of empathy or understanding, or maybe not be as mean, just a little bit.
I think, on that note, for me, when I talk about education, I'm like, can we educate the world to be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more empathetic to people who have obesity? Because the societal narrative and belief out there that it's just your own fault and it's a lifestyle only and that's all to blame, that needs to shift. So for me, there's hope in what you've both said there, particularly in Europe, where we are so unbelievably dynamic culturally as well. So I'm really excited that you guys took the time. I know you guys got to get back to appointments and work and everything else. So thank you so much, Patty Neese and OAC over in the States, and to Ian Patton from Obesity Canada up there. And stay safe, you guys. Happy New Year to you. And thank you for joining our lounge.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great to be here. Take care.
Well, there you heard it. Reviews from advocates who have actually engaged with the team that created the movie The Whale that will launch here in a few weeks' time. Now, my opinion isn't the most important here at all. It's probably bottom of the bucket, to be honest, because I want to bring on three of my male colleagues, some who which you've seen before. We have Konstantin, who is joining us across from Bulgaria, who is our young lead when it comes to the likes of our podcasts on the voices of youths and obesity. And Konstantin will join us to give his opinion. And we also have Frederico, who you would have heard a few moments ago speaking to, I suppose, the podcast and giving his opinion in Spanish. And we also have Mario joining us, who is joining us from Portugal. Now, I want to come to the three of you, and I really want to get your thoughts. And it's rare that we have an all male panel. So I'm going to be very quiet and I'm going to come to Constantine first. And Constantine, can I ask you for the next couple of minutes to give your thoughts on what you've heard from Paddy and Inder and this movie coming out?
Absolutely. I want to start out by saying, like, Ian has sold me on this movie. He deserves some residuals, honestly, because, like, from everything I've heard from him, he got me excited to watch it. And as he said, I believe that people who have went through similar experiences are going to relate more to that movie, and they're going to relive some of those experiences. So absolutely very exciting there. I honestly love their participation in the project, because I think it's like, I cannot even describe how important it is to involve people who are living with obesity and currently are living with obesity into such a project, to get their perspective, to get their thoughts, to get their ideas. It's just a super cool idea, and it's a super cool decision to be made by such a big scale project.
Yeah, I agree. And Ian said, it brought the human factor in that he hadn't seen before. And I think in Hollywood, we just constantly see, we've seen the Eddie Murphy in the fat suit. We've seen, Mrs. Doubtfire. We've seen, the fat person being the funny person, the quintessential people pleaser all the time. Um, but it's very, very rare to actually have somebody with obesity understand a movie and come away going, oh my gosh, maybe people will be a little bit more empathetic. And as a young man,
Oh,
you have had your challenges and your struggles with obesity. And I would imagine that makes you a little bit hopeful, I would say, Constantine.
so from what Ian said, is like, it's not a happy story. We do not need a happy story. Obviously, it's not a happy story. Everyone who has went through that knows that there's the upsides and the downsides. So the movies that you mentioned, like the Eddie Murphy movies, those are classics, and we are used to that. But we have never seen the other perspective, like our perspective of how things are. It's a beautiful opportunity. I'm very excited. I would love to see, like, people leaving the cinema and their thoughts on that movie, and their thoughts on, like, for example, their neighbor who is living with obesity, and they have never viewed him that way. They have never seen the struggle, the fight. So yeah, just an eye-opening experience.
Most definitely. Thank you so much, Constantine. I want to bring on Mario, just on the back of what Constantine has actually said there. I think, and I had this thought, and it was Ewan from Iyazu who came out with me. He said, why don't we have like a goggle box where, a number of different people, psychologists, behavioral specialists, um, friends, neighbors, patients, all watch the movie, we record it and see their reactions. Because for me, I think this is actually quite fascinating. What do you think?
Wow, I think that idea is really amazing because what I find most interesting in this movie is that it is a serious discussion on obesity. So it's not a humoristic movie like you were touching that
Yeah.
point. So it is a serious perspective, and it can be educational because
Yeah.
okay, it's fiction, it's a storytelling, but it is a co-creation with real patients. They were actually part of the process. So this is
Yeah.
wonderful. This is what we need to finally get a disease understanding in a wider range of all the society. So that idea of bringing so many different healthcare professionals, people from society in general, and to actually understand the reaction that these very powerful Hollywood movie can have in helping us to make other people understand, because people who are living with obesity and the caregivers and people that are very understanding what is happening have their own perspective, but we need to fight these bias and stigmas. So yeah, it's wonderful. Gets me so excited for 2023. Yeah.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. I was like, Mario will be so excited about this idea, because I look at Europe, and I'm going to bring Fede in here now. And if you're okay to translate again for Fede, Europe is so diverse. You know, when a movie goes out, I feel in North America, you know, it's quite different when it hits Europe, where we have so many different languages, how the translation works, how the words are picked up, how the stigma is from Eastern Europe to Northern Europe, Western, Southern. You know, it's very, very challenging. But Frederico in Spain, in Espanol, can you actually give us your thoughts on what you listen to, Fede?
Pues creo, y lo creo desde el corazón, que va a ser un gran impulso positivo para terminar con la estigmatización de la sociedad en general. Además, espero que las personas que aún tienen dudas sobre que esto es un problema de salud y que las personas que viven con obesidad tienen problemas, por eso llegan a ese punto, abran los ojos, y que también los tomadores de decisiones comiencen a ver que esto es un problema y que es necesario tomarlo como una enfermedad y multifactorial, y que es momento de ponerse en acción. No tener más excusas ni